War is a terrible thing, and it's something that the world in general should avoid for various reasons. It always has a huge cost. Lives are lost by the thousands to the millions depending on the scope. And if the wrong side wins in the war, then the world will truly never be the same again. World War II was arguably the most important war ever waged, as the future of many grand ideals, including freedom for all people, was on the line. The scale of the conflict almost encompassed the entire world, going across numerous continents and the many oceans that connected them. The call to arms was so great that even American athletes and movie stars were either drafted or were asked to join so that they could help the war effort in their own unique ways. Today, we'll break down some of those actors who found in the war. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. 8. Jimmy Stewart. We're going to start out with an actor who is known for great films, but when you think about the characters he played, you'll look at him and go, wait, that guy was in World War II? Jimmy Stewart is hailed for his performances in all kinds of movies, not the least of which was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Vertigo, It's a Wonderful Life, and even Harvey. He was known for playing gentle characters while also being able to show emotional depth while also combating his very unique wobbly voice. Yet when World War II came, he didn't hesitate to join the war effort, even though it meant putting a pause on his career. So, why did he do it? In many ways, it was something he was destined to do because his family had ties to the military going back to the Civil War via his grandfathers. Then his dad served in World War I, so it was almost a tradition of sorts, and Jimmy Stewart was happy to serve the Air Corps to help do his part. But not at first. You see, he was a tall guy, and due to this, the military's requirements for the weight of a soldier weren't met. That's right, he almost got denied military service because he was too skinny. What are the odds? Regardless, he didn't let that stop him. He ate a lot of stuff, including various unhealthy foods that would ensure he gained weight, and he was eventually allowed to join. Not only did he join, he did really well. He was an instructor for planes, including bombers, and he even led a squadron of them at one point during the European campaign. His service was so great that Jimmy Stewart earned the Distinguished Flying Cross, among other accolades. The twists don't stop there because even after the war ended, Stewart may have gone on with his acting career, but he stayed in the Air Force too, via the reserves. As such, by the time his military career was over, he was a brigadier general. So, what is the lesson from this first entry? Well, to be blunt, you can't judge an actor just by the roles he or she plays on screen. The nature of their character is shown when they're asked to step up, and Jimmy Stewart did that and then some. Harvey would be proud. 7. Kirk Douglas. While Jimmy Stewart was a Hollywood star, before the events of World War II, men like Kirk Douglas served in the war effort before they made their name among the stars. Also unlike Stewart, he served in the U.S. Navy after the events of World War II. Starting out with the rank of ensign, he was a communications officer, where he was tasked via the ship he was on to monitor for enemy submarines and other dangers that might interfere with the convoys of ship he would help escort across the Atlantic so they could participate in the various theaters of the war. While it may not seem that dangerous to be a communications officer on a ship, these vessels were often one of the most targeted things in the water. At the time, the German forces had true water superiority via their U-boats. They could target enemy craft with ease and go mostly undetected until it was too late. Thus, Kirk Douglas had to literally keep his ears open for anything and everything that could go wrong with the fleet and alert anyone to the dangers that were ahead. Further proving this point was that he did indeed get injured during his service and was honorably discharged in 1944. Thankfully, the injuries weren't so severe that they messed with his acting career, which would go on for decades and lead to iconic roles like Spartacus. Even still, he served his country well, and he would later go on to play military roles from time to time, and we're sure he used his experiences from those actual war missions to guide what his characters would do. 6. Paul Newman. When you talk about Paul Newman, you must talk about how he was one of the true cool guys of Hollywood, and even in his later years he was delivering memorable performances for people to enjoy. But he, like all the others on this list, wasn't afraid to sign up when World War II came around and joined the U.S. Navy in 1943 before America started its true invasion of the European and Japanese theaters. He actually wanted to be a pilot, which would have been dangerous on many levels. However, he then realized during his training that he was colorblind, and thus couldn't do what was needed in the craft. He pivoted well and became both a gunner and a radio operator in the Pacific Theater. And luck was another key part of his career, because not only did he get stopped from being a pilot, on one key mission he was meant to go on via the USS Bunker Hill. The pilot he was assigned to got sick, so they were left behind while the others went ahead on the mission. At this point in the war, the Japanese had invoked the kamikaze strategy, and the Bunker Hill was struck by them, killing almost 400 sailors. Newman could have been one of them if he was there. He knew this too, and thus appreciated life in all its forms going forward, including doing philanthropy and embracing his Hollywood career. 5. Charles Bronson. As we've already shown and will continue to show, there are a few actors out there that you might look at and go, yeah, it makes sense that they would join the war effort. Charles Bronson is one such man. He's one of Hollywood's all-time great tough guys. And it didn't matter if it was Once Upon a Time in the West or Death Wish. He was a guy that you didn't want to come across on screen, because you'd basically be doomed if you were the bad guy in that situation. In 1943, Charles Bronson joined the United States Air Force, and when he was sent to the Pacific Theater of War to fight the Japanese, he was a gunner on B-29 Superfortress bombers. These were the crafts that would carry incredibly powerful payloads of armaments and then drop them on targets to blow them up to kingdom come. The gunner position was just as important, though, as enemy planes would try and shoot down the bombers before they could reach their target. Oh, and the gunner was one of the most exposed positions on the plane itself. Thus, Bronson had to have serious courage every time he went into the gunner position, as there was no guarantee he would get out of it. Sure enough, during one of his 25 missions to Japan, he was injured by shrapnel and later given the Purple Heart. What might surprise you, though, is that Bronson was deeply troubled by all he had experienced during the war, including losing his fellow airmen. That is where his acting career came into play. You see, he didn't exactly adjust to civilian life as easily as you would expect for a man of his legend. Instead, he needed to act to help get through things and to channel his pain into the roles so that he could deliver great performances. It worked, and his legend grew even more than it already was. 4. James Doohan. That's right, we're now going to go where many men and women have gone before and talk about Star Trek by discussing the most epic red shirt ever, Scotty, aka actors James Doohan. And while he was Canadian, he saw the war up close and personal, including being there on D-Day when the various Allied forces landed on Juno Beach to try and storm Normandy. He not only led his group to safety, he personally took out some snipers that were trying to pick them off. See? Scotty's a great shot, but Scotty also got shot, including taking one bullet to the chest, where he honestly should have died had it not been for a cigarette case protecting him. He also lost a finger in that war, but that didn't stop his acting career, which is still praised to this day. 3. Clark Gable. When you think of golden age stars of Hollywood, you can't help but think of men like Clark Gable. He was a man that was so good at what he did, he could perform just about any role with ease, and everyone in the audience either wanted him or wanted to be him. Yet, like many on this list, his journey to the military wasn't what you would expect. He didn't join up when he was young, but instead when he was 41. Just as important, he did it because his wife, Carol Lombard, died during a war bond tour. He took his pain over her loss and transformed it into service and joined the U.S. Air Force. You might think that his role was more ceremonial than others on this list due to his age, but that wasn't the case at all. In fact, like Charles Bronson, he was trained to be a gunner and actually flew missions over Europe. Then, when the military decided to make a certain movie to help bring in more war bonds, Clark Gable helped produce the film to ensure it had the desired effect. Oh, and fun fact, if you're wondering just how important Clark Gable was to the war effort, there was a bounty put on his head for his capture. The person who made that bounty? Adolf Hitler. Guess he saw his movies. 2. Mel Brooks. Yeah, we bet you didn't see that name coming. But it's true. The man behind Spaceballs, Blazing Saddles, History of the World, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and more was indeed a World War II veteran. Hey, as we proved with Jimmy Stewart, you can't judge a book by its cover, okay? In fact, he was one of many people who were straight up drafted into the war. He was only 17 when he joined the Army and became a combat engineer. If you don't know what that is, it's a very dangerous role, and in Europe, he was tasked with disabling landmines. Yeah, the guy who was used to making explosively funny films in theaters used to disarm actual bombs during the war. As if that accolade wasn't enough for you, he also was a part of one of the most important battles in World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. If you want to know how his time in the military affected Mel Brooks, it honestly set him on the path to make him one of the most legendary comedians and filmmakers ever. Instead of being scarred heavily by the things he experienced, he looked inward and realized he should try and make people laugh, and that was what carried him forward. He didn't regret what he did, and he would even joke about his military service from time to time. He knew it was important, but what he did afterward with his films was just as important. And we really hope Spaceballs 2 is good and not a bomb. 1. Christopher Lee. We decided to end this video on Christopher Lee because he is a fascinating man with a life and career that was incredible both on and off screen. Seriously, everything you know about this guy via his Hollywood success pales in comparison to what he did when the cameras weren't rolling. For example, even before World War II truly started, Christopher Lee was fighting in Poland to try and stop the Soviet Union advance that was happening. Later on, he joined the Royal Air Force, but he never flew planes because of his vision at the time. However, his true contributions came via his work in the intelligence field. He was attached to a group that worked in North Africa and had to do deep spy-style missions to try and stop the German forces that were there and undermine their operations. That's right, Christopher Lee was a real-life spy. Not only was he a spy, he was a really good one, and his efforts helped the Allied advance in both Africa and Italy, and he was awarded with medals for his service. That being said, he was such a good spy that he didn't really talk about his spy service unless he had to. For example, one time, he flat out noted that he has seen death happen right in front of him and that he was numb to it. However, the best example of him divulging what happened to him during the war came when he was filming The Lord of the Rings. He played Saruman, the original White Wizard who would betray Middle-earth to ally himself with Sauron. In the third movie, via the extended cuts, he filmed a scene where he was to be stabbed in the back by his former ally Wormtongue. During the filming, director Peter Jackson tried to guide Christopher Lee on what would happen and how he should react. Lee noted that when someone is stabbed in the back, they gasp loudly. When Jackson asked how he knew that, he replied, "Because I was stabbed in the back." Such a legend. And that's all from the conflict that was World War II and the many men from Hollywood's golden age who participated in it in one way or another. Were you surprised by some of the big names that were shown on this list? Or did you know about them serving before you watched our video today? Does it make you appreciate them more knowing that they were willing to risk their lives to save the country they lived in and the world they were in? Do you know of another actor who served in World War II that could have made our list? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.